Is this a sin? Catholics ask this question more than almost any other. Not out loud, usually. Not in confession, not to their priest, not even to their family. They ask it quietly, to themselves, in the middle of an ordinary day. Maybe this is something they've been doing for years and never questioned. Maybe it's something they felt guilty about once and then just kept doing. Maybe they genuinely don't know. And honestly, a lot of the time, nobody ever told them clearly. So that's what this video is about. 7 things Catholics constantly ask about. Real scenarios, real questions, clear answers. Without the lecture, without the guilt trip, and without pretending the answers are simpler than they are. Let's get into it.
The first one is missing Mass, and this comes up constantly. On vacation, when you're sick, when work gets in the way. When it's one of those days where getting everyone out the door feels genuinely impossible. So let's be straight about what the Church actually teaches here. Missing Mass on a Sunday or holy day of obligation without a serious reason is a mortal sin. That is the formal teaching, and it hasn't changed. The Catechism is clear on it. But, and this matters, the Church also recognizes what it calls a just cause. If you are genuinely ill, if you are caring for someone who cannot be left, if there is no Mass reasonably accessible to you, if there is a genuine emergency, these are not sinful absences. The obligation does not apply when it genuinely cannot be met. The honest question to ask yourself is not whether you had a reason. Almost everyone has a reason. The honest question is whether it was a serious one, or whether it was convenience dressed up as necessity. Here is the deeper point, though. The Church didn't invent the Sunday Mass obligation to control people. It exists because showing up matters, because community matters, because the Eucharist is not a reward for the sufficiently devout, it is the source of everything. Missing it occasionally with genuine cause is one thing. Drifting away from it habitually, week after week, is something else. Not just in terms of the Church's teaching, but spiritually. The question isn't just, is this a sin? It's, what is this habit doing to my relationship with God?
Watching certain shows and content. This one is everywhere right now, and nobody talks about it clearly. Where is the line with what you watch? The Church doesn't have a list. There is no Vatican-approved streaming guide. But it does have a principle, and it comes from the Catechism and from common sense in equal measure. The principle is this: what you consume affects you. What you let into your mind and your imagination shapes you, slowly and consistently, in ways you often don't notice until the shaping has already happened. So the question isn't whether a show has mature content. Almost every worthwhile piece of art made in the last 50 years has mature content. The question is whether what you are watching is pulling you towards something good, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's dark, or whether it is normalizing something that corrodes your capacity for decency, for purity, for the way you see other people. Graphic content that treats other human beings as objects, content that glamorizes cruelty, pornography, which is not a gray area, which the Church is unambiguous about, and which research completely independent of religion consistently shows does real psychological damage. Those aren't taste questions, those are formation questions. But a gritty drama with moral complexity and difficult scenes, a thriller that explores violence as the evil it is, that's not the same thing, and treating it as such doesn't serve anyone. The practical question to sit with is this: after I watch this, am I more or less the person I want to be? More or less capable of the things that matter? If the honest answer is less, that's your answer. The next one is living together before marriage. This is probably one of the most asked questions for Catholics, and it deserves a straight answer. The Church teaches that sexual intimacy belongs within marriage. That is not a cultural preference or a historical hangover. It is a teaching rooted in the theology of what marriage actually is, what the body means, and what sex communicates. The Church's position is that sex is not just a physical act. It is a total self-giving, and that total self-giving has a context in which it is true, marriage, and contexts in which it is incomplete. Living together before marriage, if it involves sexual intimacy, is contrary to that teaching. The church calls it fornication, which is an old word that a lot of people find off-putting, but the teaching behind it is not arbitrary. Now, here is where the pastoral reality matters. The majority of Catholics in most Western countries have lived with a partner before marriage, or are doing so now. That is just true. And the Church's response to that reality is not to write those people off or treat them as beyond the reach of grace. It is to invite them always back toward the fullness of what love is designed to be. If you are in this situation, the answer is not shame. The answer is not to pretend the teaching doesn't exist. The answer is an honest conversation with God, with your partner, possibly with a priest, about what you want your relationship to be built on and where you want it to go. The Church's teaching on this is demanding. It is also, in its fullest form, one of the most beautiful things Catholicism has to say about what human beings are worth. Those two things are both true at the same time. What about skipping prayer? This one surprises people when they hear it framed as a sin question, because it feels more like a failing than a sin, more like laziness than wrongdoing. But let's think about it honestly. The Catechism describes prayer as a vital necessity, not a nice addition to a Christian life, a necessity. The Church teaches that without prayer, the relationship with God atrophies, slowly, quietly, in the same way that any relationship atrophies when communication stops. Is occasionally skipping your prayer routine a mortal sin? No, almost certainly not. Mortal sin requires grave matter, full knowledge, and deliberate consent. A tired person falling asleep before they finish their rosary does not meet that bar. But here is what is worth sitting with. If prayer has dropped out of your life entirely, not occasionally, not on hard days, but entirely, something has happened to the relationship. And the question of whether it is technically sinful is probably the wrong question. The right question is what it tells you about where you are with God. Because prayer is not primarily about obligation. It is not a duty you perform to stay in good standing. It is the conversation that keeps everything else alive. When it goes quiet, things start to drift. Not dramatically, not all at once, just quietly, in a direction you didn't choose. The good news is that this is one of the easiest things to fix. Not perfectly, not all at once, but a single honest minute of prayer today is enough to start. The next one on our list is doubting God. This one is important, and it might be the one that most needs to be said clearly. Doubt is not a sin. Let that land for a second, because a lot of Catholics carry guilt about this that they have absolutely no reason to carry. Doubt, the experience of uncertainty, of not being able to feel God's presence, of questioning whether any of this is real, is not a failure of faith. It is, in the experience of almost every serious Christian who has ever lived, a part of faith. The darkness that comes before clarity, the silence that precedes being heard. The Psalms are full of doubt. The saints were full of doubt. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, one of the most visibly faithful people of the 20th century, spent nearly 50 years in interior darkness, feeling nothing, continuing anyway. That was not sin. That was heroic faith. What can become spiritually problematic is not doubt, but what you do with it. Deliberately choosing to reject what you know to be true, not because you are uncertain, but because the truth is inconvenient, that is a different thing. Using doubt as a permanent exit from the demands of faith, rather than a passage through difficulty, that is worth examining. But if you are watching this and you have been carrying guilt about the fact that you sometimes wonder, sometimes question, sometimes can't feel God at all, set that guilt down. It doesn't belong to you. The fact that you are still asking the question is itself a form of faith. For this one, the question usually sounds like this. Is it a sin to say OMG? What about using Jesus as an expression? What does taking the Lord's name in vain actually mean? The commandment, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain," is about more than an exclamation. The word vain means empty, worthless, without meaning. To take God's name in vain is to use it as though it means nothing, as though the one it names is not real, not present, not worthy of the weight the name carries. That can happen in a few ways. Using it as a casual filler word, OMG, oh my God, Jesus Christ, as an expression of frustration, falls into a gray area that the Church takes seriously, even if the average Catholic doesn't. It's not the gravest sin in the theology, but it is worth asking what it says about how you think about God when His name is the word you reach for when you stub your toe. More serious and clearly sinful is blasphemy, deliberately speaking with contempt or hatred about God, about Christ, about the saints, using sacred names in a context designed to mock or degrade. That is different in kind, not just degree. The practical takeaway is this: the way you use a name reflects what you think of the person it belongs to. If God is real to you, if the relationship matters, the name tends to take care of itself. We're ending on this one deliberately because it's the one that quietly underlies almost every other scenario on this list: not going to confession. A lot of Catholics haven't been to confession in years, some in decades. Some can't remember the last time they went, and the longer it has been, the harder it feels to go back. The gap creates its own weight. The longer you stay away, the more there seems to be to say, and the more impossible the whole thing starts to feel. So let's be honest about a few things. First, avoiding confession when you are aware of serious sin is itself contrary to church teaching. The Catechism asks that mortal sins be confessed at least once a year and before receiving communion. If you have been receiving communion for years while aware that you have unconfessed serious sin, that is worth taking seriously, not as a reason for more shame, but as a reason to finally go. Second, the priest has heard it before. Whatever you think you have to confess, whatever you are dreading saying out loud, he has heard it, probably many times. The confessional is not a place of judgment. It is, in the Catholic understanding, the place where Christ himself forgives you through the ministry of the priest. The embarrassment of saying the thing out loud is real. It is also, almost universally, far worse in anticipation than in the actual moment. Third, and this is the most important thing, you do not have to have it all together before you go. You do not need to have stopped sinning, changed your life, become a better person first. That is the wrong order. Confession is not the reward for having already improved. It is the beginning of the improvement. You go as you are, with what you have, and you receive what is waiting for you there. The grace available in a good confession, especially after a long absence, is not a small thing. The Church has a specific rite for returning Catholics, sometimes called a general confession, where the whole period of absence can be addressed at once. Many priests welcome it. Many people describe it as one of the most significant moments of their spiritual lives. The door is not locked. It is not even closed. It is standing open, and it has been standing open the entire time you were away. So there they are. 7 questions, 7 honest answers. Here's the thing about sin that most people don't hear often enough. The Church's teaching on sin is not fundamentally about rules. It is not a system designed to make you feel bad about yourself or to keep you in line. At its root, it is a teaching about what you are worth and what you are made for. Every single one of the teachings covered in this video exists because the Church believes, seriously, deeply, without apology, that you are capable of more than the things that diminish you. Sin matters, not because God is keeping score. Sin matters because it puts distance between you and the life you were actually made for, between you and the people you love, between you and the version of yourself that, somewhere underneath everything, you actually want to be. The question, is this a sin, is worth asking, but the better question, the one underneath it, is always this: is this who I want to be? And if the answer is no, the way back is never as far as it feels. Thank you for watching. If this helped you, share it with someone who might need it. And if you have questions, specific scenarios, things I didn't cover, leave them in the comments. I read every one, and it helps me know what to make next. God bless you.